Nous voilà 10 ans après.
Here we stand 10 years later.
10 ans après les attentats les plus meurtriers
10 years
qu'ait jamais
after the
connu
most
la France.
violent attacks to have ever fallen France. 10 years.
Mais que pèsent ces 10 années?
But what weight does that
Que
bear?
pèsent les mots devant les douleurs? Les
What weight can
silences?
be given to the pain, to the silence?
Ce qui est advenu est à coup sûr irréparable.
What took place is quite undoubtedly
Et vous
irreparable.
avez eu des jours muets,
There were
et des jours
days
aveugles,
of silence, of
des
blindness,
jours de nuit et des nuits blanches.
days that fled into
Des
night,
jours où il fallait faire
sleepless
semblant,
nights,
où il fallait
days where
tenir.
we had to pretend, to keep on soldiering on,
Des jours où la vie semblait revenir.
days where life
Efficace.
seemed quite shortly to return.
Des jours impossibles.
Impossible,
moindre
endless days,
La moindre
simply
odeur
because
faisait revivre à
the
l'identique
slightest sound
passé et
or
au
smell took us straight back
les hurlements dans la musique,
to what people had lived,
le sang
screams
sur
over the
l'asphalte,
music, blood
l'odeur
on
de
the
poudre,
asphalt,
les corps,
the smell
vos
of
vies
gunpowder,
suspendues par les
bodies,
poignets,
people
suspendues au silence,
held by their hands, by their
les
wrists,
téléphones par terre
held
sonnant dans le vide
by
et
silence,
affichant des noms
phones
d'êtres
ringing
aimés
into the
auxquels
night,
personne ne décrocherait jamais.
phones that will never
L'angoisse,
be picked up again,
l'horreur,
fear,
le
horror,
deuil.
and mourning.
Ceux parmi vous qui sont tombés
To those who fell
pour ne jamais se relever.
and
Ceux
who
parmi
never
vous
got
qui
up,
se sont relevés, blessés
and to
dans leur
those
chair,
who
dans
did
leur
get
âme,
up but who were wounded in body and
avec si
mind,
souvent la culpabilité d'être encore
often
là.
with the feeling of guilt for still
Ceux
being
parmi
alive,
vous qui ont été classés
To
parmi les
those
survivants,
who were given the
et que la
title
mort avait
of
simplement
survivor,
choisi de frapper plus lentement,
but
plutôt d'avertir,
who would slowly
à revivre.
dying because they were never able to find a way to live
Ceux qui
again.
ont perdu ce jour-là,
To those who on that
leurs
night
parents,
lost a child,
leurs frères,
a
leurs
parent,
sœurs,
brother, sister, relative, or friend,
l'homme ou la femme de leur vie,
the man or woman that they were going to live
leur
with,
petite fille à naître,
the father of an unborn daughter,
et leur vie d'avant. Le corps et le cœur en lambeaux,
with their body
visage
and heart in
cousu.
tatters,
puis recousu.
trying to sew it all
Avec
back
cette
together
question lancinante,
with that
pourquoi?
painful question, why?
On voudrait trouver du sens à ce qui s'est passé.
To try and find meaning in what had happened.
Mais chacune de vos douleurs est insensée.
But all
Injuste.
of that pain feels so meaningless,
Insupportable.
unfair, unbearable.
On vous a dit parfois de retourner à la vie normale.
People tell you to just
Mais
get
rien
back to
de
normal
normal
life, but
dans
there
une
is
vie
nothing
fauchée dans la fleur
normal
de l'âge, dans un
in
enfant qui meurt avant ses parents,
seeing someone
dans
who
un
is
bébé
cut
qui est
down,
orphelin.
was murdered
Rien de
when they were
normal.
too young.
Dans cette douleur
There is nothing
larvée,
normal about that
lancinante,
pain that
ressurgit chaque fois qu'un autre
subsides
attentat frappait notre
or that
sol.
rests
Des
there
enfants,
forevermore.
des adultes,
There is nothing
des
normal
forces
about
de l'ordre,
children,
des professeurs,
about
de Nice à
teachers,
Strasbourg,
about
victimes à
nieces in
nouveau du
Strasbourg
terrorisme.
who are once again victims of terrorism.
Et nous pensons à eux tous ce soir,
We
le cœur
think
serré.
of all of you tonight with a heavy heart.
Au lendemain des attentats, vous avez fait l'épreuve
Following
de la
these attacks,
normalité impossible.
People tried to get back to a sense of
La
normalcy,
tranquillité
albeit impossible,
impossible.
a sense
La
of
vie
peacefulness,
impossible.
life
La vie pourtant.
that seemed impossible, but
Ceux
it
qui
remained
haïssent
life.
Ne crieront
To
jamais
those
plus fort
who
que ceux
hate,
qui aiment.
They will
Et le soir
always
du 13 novembre, les
speak
assassins ont
out,
trouvé
but those who
plus
love will speak out
courageux,
stronger. And
plus
those who
combatifs.
survived,
Ces
they came out
forces de l'ordre
stronger,
qui sont
more
intervenues,
combative.
les gendarmes montés du Stade de France,
The gendarmes in the Stade de
les
France,
policiers
to
du
the
quartier du
policemen and
Bataclan,
women in the
les
neighborhood
deux
around the
hommes de
Bataclan,
la BAC qui en quelques minutes ont
to
ouvert le
those
feu et
men
atteint
in
un
the back
terroriste,
who entered the
arme
building
de poing
and
contre Kalachnikov.
fired
Ces hommes de la BAC
against the
75,
Kalashnikov
de la
wielding
brigade de
terrorists,
recherche et
to
d'intervention,
the
du
BRI,
raid en appui, tous
to the
ceux
raid,
qui ont envoyé à leur
to all
famille
those
ce soir-là des messages d'amour qu'ils pensaient devoir
who
être les
sent
derniers.
messages to their loved ones, thinking that was going to be their last,
C'est
but who
comme si
survived. to those policemen and women who, in the Alpha and Bravo columns, went in against the assailants, who were given the Legion of Honor in recognition for their bravery in their service to the nation, to those municipal policemen who were the first to arrive on the scene, taking the utmost risk, to those working in the stadiums who were on the forefront, to the doctors and nurses, medical professionals who all of a sudden found themselves in a war zone, the mining teams, the local elected officials, all those men and women who took part of the legal investigation to hunt down the assailants, all of those people who went in after to clean up, to the wait staff in the cafes and bistros nearby, to those people who helped hunt down the assailants, risking their lives. They did what had to be done. The only choice they had, one which is deserving of great recognition. To those men and women who are hiding there under the bodies of strangers, staying perfectly silent out of fear. To the men who tried crossing from one side to the other of the Bataclan despite the sound of gunshots. To the singers who were pushed into a taxi to escape. To the woman who opened up her door to 20 blood-strewn people. To those people who opened up much more than a door. They opened up their hearts. To the man who went down into the street with a first aid kit, hearing gunshots, without a shirt on simply because he had what he could to try and put tourniquets around people bleeding, to try and save lives. And our state, our country, our government who held strong. To the President, Prime Minister, Minister of the Interior, for everything that you did, and everyone working with you, the prefects, with all of the state agencies working with you, the Town Hall of Paris, elected officials, all of you working together, unwavering. To our legal system, magistrates, judges, lawyers, bailiffs, all of you who for countless years and then for countless months took to trial one of the greatest trials our nation has ever seen. To our community organizations, associations and federations who held strong. And as you just said yourselves, you stood up and spoke up so that no one would be forgotten, no one left at the wayside. To the millions of French men and women who took to the streets to march, placing candles and flowers, messages of love. Yes, terrorists saw that there were people who were far braver than they were. Paris held strong. You held strong. France held strong. Our republic held strong. Through fraternity, through justice, through truth. Because of our love for life, we held strong. And each and every one of us played our role. Our lives became universal. The Islamic terrorists, they didn't want to target you individually, they didn't want to target your children or your loved ones, they wanted to target France. They were targeting our desire to be French. They were targeting the fact that we want to create a notion within our world where men are equal to women, and vice versa, where we celebrate difference, where we want to have open places in the streets where we can look each other in the eyes saying what we want and what we believe and allowing others to do so, where we can play music, where we can sing, where we can say what we have on our hearts, where we are protected by a secular society, one where Voltaire could dispute with Molière, where we can enjoy theatre. And when terrorists want to strike democracy and freedom, France and Paris are the ones being targeted. That night, they targeted sports venues, food venues, arts and cultural venues, spaces of freedom. And because you are children of a free French nation, because you are either French or foreigners, because you are in France, you were murdered. You came from 17 countries, but in the eyes of the attackers, you were all children of France. In the days after the attacks, one woman with us here tonight went back to collect the belongings of the man she was going to spend her life with. In the papers found in his wallet were his voting card. And on the face of the Marianne there was a drop of blood, like a tear. Those who died on the 13th of November are not just victims of hatred, nor some abstract idea. They were murdered by terrorists. Terrorists who were trying to bear forward an Islamist ideal. A group built up by networks with their own codes, their own ways of operating. A group trying to annihilate our notion of humanity, our country, because of our history, because of where we want to take our country in the future. Jihadism in our borders. We have been trying our utmost to fight against it, to whittle it away, but it always is born back. It is harder to find, harder to notice. At any time, this form of Islamism can rear its ugly head once again, be it in the Horn of Africa, be it in Asia, be it in Europe. We need to be permanently vigilant. And other forms of terrorism will arise, and we will not give in to them. Our nation will continue to fight against such forms of terrorism without giving up on our own values of freedom and justice. France will do its utmost to ensure that no future attacks will occur and to punish those who will dare attempt to try such an attack once again. Unprecedented measures were taken immediately after these attacks. A state of emergency was declared, protecting our borders. And then bills that came in to update our laws in states of threat to better fight against terrorism while protecting our civil liberties, with the abilities to close down religious venues, to carry out inspections, everything that we could do to try and create barriers in the path of future murderers, to try and nip in the bud anyone who would desire to take action. And I know how all of your associations have been helping us in doing this, working with the nation's security divisions. We have given them more money, more resources, working with our foreign investigative bodies as well, enforcing our penitentiary systems, reinforcing our intelligence-collecting agencies. And we created a national coordinating body for the fight against terrorism, a national procureur's office for anti-terrorism crimes.
car le terrorisme se joue des frontières.
Because we have to work beyond French borders simply because terrorism knows no borders. We have to find ways to cut the funding of terrorist networks, and we will continue to track down terrorists beyond French borders, into the Middle East, into the Sahel region, to stop people returning back from Syria. 85 terrorist attacks have been foiled in the past 10 years, 6 of which would have occurred this year. We have bolstered the values of our nation, the values that have guided us for the past centuries, values that we will continue to defend, and we will continue to tirelessly uphold them to make sure that future generations will also believe and uphold these values. So tirelessly, we must continue to make future generations future Republicans. No one, unfortunately, can never guarantee that there will be no more terrorist attacks. We can only promise that we will have a steely response to anyone who will try to attack our nation, that we will continue to hunt down terrorists, and that we will continue to care for our future generations, for our youth.
Des dispositifs et des droits que vous avez construits, vous, vos associations,
for everything that we have built, block by block, brick by brick, all of that will not be for naught. Not a single one of your tears will be in vain.
Non. Il n'y a pas de sens.
There is no meaning. There is no justification for your pain. There never will be. We cannot find meaning in the attacks that took place on the 13th of November, but we can give meaning to the 14th of November and to every day that follows, to every step that follows, where one step after another we create a story of assistance, of help, of courage, of bravery, one where we remain ever vigilant. From when the sun rises to when the sun sets, we will remain vigilant. We will never forget. And with the terrorism memorial in the 13th arrondissement in Paris, we will ensure that we will never forget the history of violence, the history of its victims, to show that we are a nation that looks to the past as well as the future. This will be a story of hope, a story of fraternity. This is a garden of flowers, red, white, and blue, with the names of the fallen. This is a symbol of the strength of our nation, one bound by memory, one that will stand up against the tests of time. We are united, and we are together. And because we have the strength to carry forward these fights, we will continue to live. We will always carry high the values so that each and every one of your steps, each and every day that you have lived these past 10 years will be full of meaning. That spirit of resistance through which death has no power. Life is once again back to where it rightfully should be. They wanted to bring death, and we responded with life. They wanted to give fear, and yet they just made us ever more vigilant, fighting for our values, our thirst for life. They wanted to divise us, yet we remain united. They wanted to efface us from the books of history, but we are still here, and we will remain here. Today and tomorrow,
pour ceux qui ne sont plus,
for you, for those who are no longer with us, for their children.
Vive la République.
Long live the French Republic, long live France.